We are very privileged here at Techno Buffalo to test and review the latest and greatest smartphones on the market right now. But oftentimes these flagship phones come with flagship prices, and it seems like $1,000 is somehow now becoming the normal price for a high-end smartphone. But a good, solid smartphone does not need to cost nearly that much. Google's fleet of Android One phones is beginning to take shape, and the newest addition to that lineup, the Nokia 6.1, is here, and it aims to bring a lot of features to customers for a very low price. Let's see how good this budget smartphone really is. So let me get this out of the way right off the bat. The naming scheme on this phone is a little bit confusing. It's technically called the Nokia 6.1 2018 edition. For the sake of simplicity in this video, I'm gonna stick with just calling it the Nokia 6. And the first thing you need to know about the Nokia 6 is its price. It's gonna vary a bit depending on location, carrier, specials, and where you get it, but it's safe to say you can get this phone for pretty much under $300 anywhere, with many online retailers like Amazon selling it to closer for a $270 price point. Now this is a big deal for many countries around the world where the price of a over $1,000 smartphone is pretty much out of the question. Nokia is teaming up with Google here to offer a solid smartphone with lots of features for a very affordable price, and I commend them for that. But how good can a smartphone that costs this much actually perform? Actually, it's not as bad as you may think. One of the biggest selling points on this phone is the fact that it's an Android One phone, and that means it's running pretty much stock Android, free of any skins, launchers, or that really annoying carrier bloatware that none of us want or ever use. You're getting the Google promise here of a stable phone, the latest software updates, security patches, and one of the purest Android experiences out there, and I really like that. After using the P20 Pro for a bit, I really miss that stock Android experience you'd get on something like the Pixel. There are no duplicate apps, there's no tweaks needed, there's no skins that need to be installed, it's just stock Android out of the box, and it's really nice. And powering Android on this phone is a Snapdragon 630 processor, 3 gigs of RAM, along with 32 gigs of internal storage. Now these specs are not the bleeding edge of mobile tech, but this phone is not trying to be a flagship or really compete with one. Throughout my 5 days of testing, the phone was not super slow, but it also wasn't super fast or buttery smooth. Though that being said, the average consumer who's getting this phone probably won't be bothered by that at all. Day-to-day tasks like multitasking and web browsing are gonna run on here without any issues, and even games perform well, though I did notice some occasional slow app load times and some general lagginess on multiple occasions. It was a very solid experience overall. Like I said, it can handle games well, even games like PUBG Mobile, which can play on here quite well, though it's gonna be on low settings and you're gonna get the occasional dropped frame. It's gonna be like I said, a very solid and enjoyable experience. Moving on from performance, let's talk about that display. The Nokia 6 has a 5.5-inch HD 1920 by 1080 display that is technically just an LCD display. It's not 18:9, there's no OLED, it's just a regular old 1080p panel, and it looks like one. And I will say that after using OLED screens or Super AMOLED displays you can find on other flagships, I do notice that the colors on this display look a little bit dull and a little washed out. It's also got some substantial bezel around it, but hey, at least there's no notch. For the average person using this to scroll through news feeds or play videos, it's gonna work just fine. And speaking of videos, if you're gonna watch a lot of videos on this phone, you're gonna need a little bit of a heads up because you may be a little bit disappointed. Unlike other Nokia phones, the earpiece on the Nokia 6 does not double as a speaker, so the only speaker you're getting on this phone is located on the bottom, and it's very easily covered by your hand when you're watching something in landscape. But a little bit of saving grace here, there is a headphone jack on top. The entire body of this phone is built really well. It's made out of aluminum, it feels very solid, and the phone also comes in a variety of different color options. The back of this phone sports what looks like on first glance like the typical 2018 style vertically stacked camera system, but on a closer inspection, that is definitely not the case. There's just a single sensor sitting inside that little cutout. But that sensor is 16 megapixels, and the photos that it shoots are very solid. And I know I keep bringing up price, but I think it's an important part of the story. Compared to the Pixel 2 XL and the iPhone 10 and the S9 and S9 Plus, this camera is far from comparable. But for the price, it brings some very good results in pretty much any environment. A few other things worth mentioning, there is a fingerprint reader on this phone and it works okay. I found there were some small delays when using it to unlock the phone a few times, but nothing super unreasonable. Battery life is actually really good on this phone. Of course, there's no super high-end display or high-end processor that's gonna run down that 3000 milliamp hour battery, but I will say that I was easily able to last a full day and I was able to play all my games, watch videos without having to worry about that battery draining. And when I did plug it in at night, it does support fast charging over USB Type-C. I do want to mention also, I was a bit disappointed by the taptic feedback built into this phone. It came across a little mushy and inconsistent when I was typing, and it just kind of was a general unpleasantness. Despite all the shortcomings this phone has, the one thing that I cannot ignore, again, is that price. For a phone that is about $270, I can't help but almost forgive some things like a slower processor, an average display, and an okay solid camera. Obviously, the price alone is not enough to give this phone a free pass from any criticism, but putting this phone into context, understanding that this phone is built not to compete with high-end flagships, but to serve a budget-conscious consumer and more emerging markets, to a certain extent, I need to understand that this, for many people, is a very perfectly good phone. It may not be your dream phone, may not be my dream phone, but for many who are looking for an affordable, good-looking, solid smartphone that also happens to run stock Android, you will be very hard-pressed to find a better alternative than the Nokia 6.1. All right, guys, so what are your thoughts on this $270 smartphone? I know oftentimes here at Techno Buffalo, we're looking at the higher-end flagships, the cream of the crop, the best. We want to change up our perspective a little bit and look at more of these budget-friendly, more affordable smartphones. And one of those phones coming out very soon is the Motorola G6, and we will have a video on that, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified when that video comes out. I am Robert Rosenfeld from Techno Buffalo. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.